Hello students, Assalamu alaikum. My name is Dr. Haseeb. That is my second lecture with you guys. My first lecture was about the pharmacodynamics. Now today my lecture is about that indirect cholinergic agonist. So basically the whole of that lecture is before starting that lecture I will give you some introduction about that autonomic nervous system, as you were previously got the lecture about that autonomic nervous system and how it works. So I just summarize the main points they are involved in that autonomic nervous system. So basically autonomic nervous system, as their name shows, they are an autonomic, so they automatically work. So these are not under the control, under your self control. So it is basically consist of two parts. Number one is a sympathetic nervous system that basically deal with the fear and the fight of the response of your body, and the second one is the parasympathetic nervous system that involved with the rest and the digestion of your body. So understanding of the parasympathetic nervous system, there is a beautiful example is that, so if you are going through a road and suddenly a dog come in front of you, so you have to escape from that dog. So in that response the body changes some things in your body. There are certain changes that occurs in your body. So that changes which occur in your body is under the control of sympathetic nervous system. Suppose in a briefly, so you have to run, so your heart rate is increasing, you have to run, so you need oxygen, so your respiration is increased, your pupil the pupils are dilated because you have to see farther, because if you have to run you have a clear image of the further side, so you can run safely. So and the other thing is that your bladder and your GIT tract, that system are decreased, because that is the time for you to run. That is not the time that you go to the washroom or like that, because that is basically fear and fight situation and you have to run. The changes which occur in that part, that is basically under the control of your sympathetic nervous system. Now coming, and the sympathetic nervous system is basically consist of the parts, they are in your bodies are under your spinal cord along the thoracolumbar regions. So they are also known as adrenergic receptors because they are under the control of that catecholamines and they are under the control of that adrenergic receptors. So coming to that parasympathetic nervous system, they are involved with the rest and the digestion. So basically they are controlled under cholinergic receptors and nicotinic receptors. Cholinergic receptors, in which they are muscarinic receptors which are under the control of that acetylcholine, and they are nicotinic receptors which are under the control of nicotine, as the name shows. They basically give a rest to your body, so they decreases heart rate, they decreases the respiration, they causes the the constriction, which is the meiosis, and they also help in the digestion of the food. So they increase the motility of the GI tract, and they also relaxes the urinary sphincter. So they also causes you to urinate. So basically they are the three exceptions in the system regarding that. Number one, the pelvic supplying nerves are basically under the control of that, and they are the cranial part, they are basically control of, they are the 2, 3 and 7. And the second one is basically that adrenal gland got preganglionic fibers, but it does not got that post ganglionic, so it directly secrete their hormones into the blood. And the third example, which is the sweat glands are basically under the control of that sympathetic nervous system. So in a case of fear and fight, you got sweaty and there is an erection of your that hairs of your skin hairs, they are the pillock, that is basically that hairs. So basically they are under the control of sympathetic, but the main their neurotransmitter is basically acetylcholine. Now coming to my main lecture, that is about indirect cholinergic agonist. So basically you know that diagram, that is cholinergic, there is basically choline that combined with acetylcholine CoA, which are enzyme which is catabolized by that enzyme to form the acetylcholine. So acetylcholine goes to that neuromuscular junction part where they are is enzyme, that is acetylcholinesterase transferase. So basically that enzyme break a part of that choline and acetate. So basically acetylcholine when goes to that neuromuscular junction or that part where there are the receptors. When it completed its action, that acetylcholine is basically destroyed by an enzyme, that is acetylcholinesterase. So basically these are the drugs which inhibit that enzyme and allowing that the level of the acetylcholine are basically increase in your body. So when acetylcholine levels are increased, they perform their physiological action, while the direct agonists are basically think they directly go to the receptors where that acetylcholine act, and that receptor they go and produce the physiological actions, while the indirect that doesn't go to that receptor, they stimulate, they inhibit that enzyme which is involved in the breakdown of acetylcholine and increases the acetylcholine concentration in that synaptic junctions. Now, indirect acting parasympathomimetics, okay, they are also known as anti-cholinesterases, transcholinesterases. There are that cholinesterases is the enzyme which is basically involved in the breakdown of acetylcholine, as I taught you. So basically they are also known as anti-cholinesterases because they inhibit that enzyme, because by inhibiting an enzyme, that is acetylcholine esterase, okay, acetylcholine esterase enzyme, that is basically the name of the enzyme which is involved in the breakdown of acetylcholine. So basically these drugs inhibit that enzyme. Now when we come to the classification, there are the two, that is the reversible. Reversible are basically a thing, if you increase the concentration of that in that acetylcholine, so that action can be reversed. So under they are the physostigmines, neostigmines, androphonium, pyridostigmine, and rivastigmine, and donepezil. So basically these are the drugs which are involved in that reversible anticholinesterases. Now in reversible, they are not corrected by increasing any concentration. So they are ecothiopate, that is basically prototype drug, and they are used in serine gases, organophosphate compounds. Organophosphate compounds are very important, and I also taught you about the how, if then you are exposed to the organophosphate and how to treat it. So organophosphate are basically used in multiple insecticides which are usually used to spray the crops, and under there are the malathion and then parathion and difluos. Now reversible anticholinesterase, so their mechanism is simple, is that they act by inhibiting the enzyme, that is acetylcholinesterase. So basically as I told you that they simply inhibit acetylcholinesterase. If acetylcholinesterase is inhibited, so acetylcholine can't be broken down into their two parts. So the level of acetylcholine at the synaptic junctions are increased, and that acetylcholine is capable of now producing physiological action. So they simply the actions of endogenous acetylcholine, that is the simply they amplify the action of that acetylcholine. Now coming to that physostigmine, that is obtained from plant. It is an alkaloid and tertiary amine and can penetrate blood-brain barriers. Okay, that is very important. You have to remember of that. There are also mnemonics at the end of that slides which help you to remember these things. So they are tertiary amines and they are able to penetrate the blood-brain barrier, and that is very important. So they are used in the treatment of glaucoma. Glaucoma is basically the thing. Glaucoma is basically a condition where the that is basically pressure in your eyes that is increased. So these drugs basically inhibit that. So they are used in the treatment of that glaucoma, and they are also used in atropine poisoning, in the way that atropine is basically an antagonist of that receptor. So when the level of acetylcholine are increased, so they can overcome that atropine and they bind to that side and inhibit that poisoning. Okay. Now the second one is that neostigmine. Now neostigmine is a synthetic agent. It is a quaternary ammonium compound. As far as that stigmine is basically tertiary, so it is a quaternary ammonium compound, and that has a poor CNS penetration. So that is not able to penetrate the brain or that blood-brain barrier. That is very important point. Physostigmine is able to penetrate that, but neostigmine is not able. That is a tertiary compound, but it is a quaternary ammonium compound. Now, they are available in a form of oral, subcutaneous and IV administration. Now, has more pronounced actions on neuromuscular junctions, GITs, urinary bladders. Actions of neostigmines on neuromuscular junctions, direct actions, they simply stimulate the nicotinic receptors at the neuromuscular junctions, so improve muscle power in patients with myasthenia gravis. Now, I think you are familiar with the myasthenia gravis, that is basically a disease in which there is an that is basically an autoimmune disease where there are certain autoimmune disease in which their receptors are basically destroyed. So, that leading to that muscle fatigue and such kind of things. So, basically these drugs increase the level of acetylcholine. So, that acetylcholine basically stimulate the nicotinic receptors to improve the muscle power in the patient which are suffering from that myasthenia gravis. That is one of the most important use of that neostigmine, that it increases the concentration of acetylcholine and then it is used in the treatment of the myasthenia gravis. As it increases the acetylcholine concentration at the neuromuscular junctions, so it causes fasciculation, switching followed by convulsions. Now, clinical uses of that neostigmine is very important. So, it is used in post-operative urinary retention. So, basically as I told you that your parasympathetic nervous system is involved in urination, it causes the person to urinate. So, when you give that drug, it increases the acetylcholine level. So, acetylcholine basically causes the person to urinate. So, post-operative urinary retention can be treated by giving them acetylcholine. In a similar way, it also increases your GIT mortality. So, post-operative paralytic ileus means that when you perform surgeries, there is a condition in which to a certain period of time intestinal mortality can be reduced, because maybe there are the certain factors that basically the anesthesia that is given to the patient, or maybe you are when you are doing the surgery you will you are involved in moving of the intestine. So, because of that the intestinal mortality can is reduced. So, basically they can given in increasing the mortality of the GI tract. They one and the other most important use of that is myasthenia gravis and tuberculin overdose. Tuberculin is basically a skeletal muscle blocker. Then it is basically a thing, if you remember about that old Indians, they have that kind of stick in which they have their needles, and when they throw these needles to their enemies, they became then their muscles are paralyzed and they fell down. So, that is basically a tuberculin that is used in that needles. So, basically that causes the muscle paralysis. So, as neostigmine improves the power of the muscle, so it is used in that tuberculin overdose. Now, pyridostigmine. It is preferred over neostigmine in the treatment of myasthenia gravis because it is simply have a longer duration of action, better tolerated, and is given twice a day in sustained release preparations. So, if you have to given the two choices of pyridostigmine is a better in the treatment of myasthenia gravis simply because of its longer duration of action and it is tolerated well. Now, in the diagnosis of myasthenia gravis, there is a drug that is given, that is the edrophonium. It is a quaternary ammonium compound and alcohol and has a rapid onset of action. The only thing with that is basically that it has a short duration of action, and that action is usually very short, just about 10 to 15 minutes. So, it is basically used in diagnosis of that myasthenia gravis condition. So, if you give that drug, the muscle power and that is improved, and after the 20 or 10 to 20 minutes when the action of that drug goes off, then the muscle fatigue can return. So, it helps in diagnosis of that myasthenia gravis. It is used to differentiate between myasthenia crisis from a cholinergic crisis. It is also used to differentiate with that, and it is also used in tuberculin overdose, short duration of action. Now, adverse effects adverse effects are due to the overstimulation, as the adverse effects of that is basically that is released, that is that is increase, that is basically related increased level of the acetylcholine. So basically acetylcholine increases muscarinic and nicotinic both receptors. So these patients are there. An easy way of remembering that all these factors, that is basically a mnemonic, that is dumbbells. So basically they causes diarrhea, they causes urination, they causes meiosis, bradycardia, then they also causes dumbbells, also lacrimation, excitation, and the 2S are for sweating and the salivations. Okay, the thing is that way, that is that dumbbells, there is an S that indicates sweating. The simple thing is that sweating is under the control of sympathetic nervous system, because its receptor, because it's that hormone is that acetylcholine. So that's why it is causing sweating here. Okay, others are the convulsions and hypotension. Now, therapeutic uses of reversible acetylcholines, then summarize, they are myasthenia gravis, glaucoma, atropine poisonings, and Alzheimer's disease, postoperative urinary retention, and paralytic ileus in the reversal of tuberculin overdose and to break adhesion between iris and lens. I already explained you about all these diseases. Now, pyridostigmine. It is preferred over neostigmine in the treatment of myasthenia gravis, because it is simply have a longer duration of action, better tolerated, and is given twice a day in sustained release preparations. So, if you have to given the two choices of pyridostigmine is a better in the treatment of myasthenia gravis, simply because of its longer duration of action. Now, signs and symptoms are that basically I told you about that: diarrhea, urination, meiosis, bronchoconstriction, bradycardia, excitation of the skeleton muscles and CNS, and lacrimation, sweating and salivation. They are basically, if you remember that, that is by the dumbbells. T for diarrhea, U urination, M for meiosis, B is bradycardia, if another B, that is bronchoconstriction, L is for lacrimation, and E for excitation, S is for salivation, and another S is for sweating. Now, now we are coming to that organophosphate poisoning. So, organophosphate is basically involved in insecticides. So, as I told you about, and the farmers which are involving in that crop cultivation, they are exposed to that organophosphate compound, because that is used in insecticides, and that insecticides are basically sprayed over the crops to protect them. So, first thing of that poisoning is to decontaminate, that is the decontamination. So, first thing, you have to remove a contaminated cloth, wash skin with soap and water. Then you have to maintain the airways, which are A, B, C. You as remember that airway, breathing, circulation. So, you have to remember that, and you have to give that diazepam if there is convulsions. Now, specific measures, that is, you have to give an injection of atropine. Atropine is simply a cholinergic antagonist. So, basically it inhibits that receptor where the acetylcholine has to act. So, organophosphate basically it inhibits the acetylcholinesterase. So, the level of acetylcholine is increased in the body. So, that atropine basically inhibit the receptors where that acetylcholine has to attach. It should be repeated till the patient is fully atropinized, then fully dilated pupil, flushed skin, tachycardia, but nicotinic effects are not reversed, as simply the logic here is that nicotinic receptors are that if it are not reversed, because nicotine is under the control of nicotine, it is not under the control of acetylcholine. So, it simply inhibit the action of acetylcholines. Then you have to give them enzymes, they are the that is the enzyme regenerators. So, that is a very important phenomenon that you have to understand. As I told you, that is pyrrolodoxine. Pyrrolodoxime is basically given as an enzyme generator. So, basically what happen is that, first thing, you have to give that atropine. Atropine simply inhibit the action of acetylcholine. After that, you have to give that pyrrolodoxine. Pyrrolodoxine, what it does, it simply regenerate the acetylcholinesterase enzyme, that enzyme which are involved in the breaking of that acetylcholine. If that enzyme is regenerated, so it is available and it breaks out that acetylcholine. So basically what the organophosphate is doing, organophosphate via its a phosphate group attaches to that acetylcholinesterase enzyme. So it attaches via phosphate to that acetylcholinesterase enzyme and inhibit that enzyme for proper functioning. What does here pyridoxine do? It basically attaches, it's grouped to that organophosphate phosphate compound and relieves that phosphate organophosphate compound from that acetylcholine receptor, that acetylcholinesterase enzyme, so that that enzyme is capable of performing function again. But one thing here is that that enzyme, if that organophosphate enzyme, if it attach for more than 6 to 8 hours to that acetylcholinesterase enzyme, then after that that attach permanently to that enzyme. So if then pyridoxine is given, it has no action on that because that phosphate compound is gone, because it attaches with that phosphate compound and then remove that organophosphate, and that phenomena is basically known as aging. So if you are asked about what is the aging of that acetylcholinase enzyme, so that is simply that after a certain period of time that organophosphate group is gone. So phosphate, if bind to that acetylcholinesterase enzyme, is not able to get detached from that group if you give that pyridoxine. That is basically an aging. That is very important phenomena and you have to understand it. That if you feel any difficulty about this phenomena, you can ask me freely, but you have to understand what the pyridoxine do and what is an aging phenomena relating to that enzyme. Okay. Now that our lecture is about your today is about that indirect agonist. So at the end they are basically table that helps you to remember about the actions of the different drugs that we have learned. So basically donepezil, rivastigmine and galantamine, they are basically increases the level of acetylcholine. They are involved in the treatment of that Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's disease is basically an age limiting dementia. It is basically simply an age limiting dementia. So it basically involved in an it basically involved in a improvement of that disease, but it does not involve in the progression, or it does not involve stop the progression of disease. It simply improves some of the functions of that Alzheimer's disease. So if you have to remember, where Dona river dances at the gala. So by a gala, that is galantamine, Dona is donepezil and rivastigmine. They are the basically drugs which are used in the treatment of Alzheimer's. Now androphonium, they are simply all the increases that acetylcholine historically used to diagnose myasthenia gravis. As I told you about that, replaced by an anti-acetylcholine receptor antibody test. Now an old test is that androphonium that is used to diagnose myasthenia. Now that test is basically repeat by the simply that measure that acetylcholine receptor antibody in the blood. So now this test is used. The other one is the neostigmine that increases acetylcholine. Neo CNS, no CNS penetration. Quaternium, that is very important, used in the treatment of postoperative and neurological ILS urinary retention, myasthenia gravis, reversal of neuromuscular junction blockage. Now physostigmine, they increases and they freely via freely, they freely crosses the blood brain barrier, increase, so they are the tertiary amines. Antidote for anticholinergic toxicity and freely atropine, and the fixes atropine toxicity, as I told you about that. Now pyridostigmine, they increases acetylcholine, increases the muscle strength. Pyridostigmine gets rid of myasthenia gravis. So pyridostigmine is involved in a better treatment, in a better way to treat the myasthenia gravis, as it is longer acting and it does not penetrate the CNS, and also the thing is that it is well tolerated. Now the last one is about cholinesterase inhibitor poisoning, that is the phosphate poisoning. As I told you about the dumbbells mnemonic. So due to the organophosphate poisoning such as parathion that irreversibly inhibit that acetylcholine, they causes diarrhea, urination, meiosis, bronchoconstriction, bradycardia. These are all about that dumbbells mnemonic. Often a component of insecticides. Antidote is entropine, that is a competitive inhibitor, and you know that, and you have learned about what is a competitive inhibition and which is non. So basically when they completely compete with the receptor side, and merodoxin is a enzyme generator that I told you in detail. Okay, today now the lecture is going to end, and that is your all today's lecture. At the end you have to give me assignments regarding classification of that indirect cholinergics and write down the management of organophosphate poisoning. So that assignments you have to complete, okay, in the lecture, and your attendance is marked according to the that assignments. Okay, thank you for today's lecture, and if you feel any difficulty in understanding any of the topic regarding to today's lecture, you can ask me or you can contact me freely.